The jogger only meant to take her usual morning trail run. She didn't expect to trip over a half-buried phone with a dying battery and a camera roll full of terror. The last photos captured a missing woman's final moments, and a shadow that shouldn't have been there. What began as a simple discovery spiraled into a labyrinth of secrets, vanished hikers, and a brother long thought dead. But when investigators followed the clues into the woods, they found something far worse than a crime scene. They found someone waiting for them. Before we dive into the gripping details of this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories. The forest trail behind Miller's Ridge was usually silent at dawn, interrupted only by the rhythmic sound of sneakers meeting damp earth. On that fog-soaked morning, jogger Leah Harrow almost missed the glint beneath a bed of pine needles, a corner of cracked glass catching the weak sunrise. A phone. No case. No lock screen. Just a smear of dirt and something darker across the shattered surface. Leah hesitated. Then she picked it up. The moment her thumb brushed the screen, it lit up. 1% battery. And a camera roll already open. The last picture taken, timestamped just 2 nights earlier, showed a young woman in a red windbreaker, eyes wide, as if startled mid-turn. Behind her, barely visible through the blur, was a shadow. A human-shaped shadow. Taller than her. Closer than she likely realized. Leah's stomach dropped. The woman's face was familiar. Too familiar. Posters of her were taped across half the town. Miles worth. Missing. Leah sprinted back to her car and drove straight to the sheriff's office. By the time the phone finally died, officers had already pulled the full photo set, a sequence of images hinting at a hike that turned from peaceful to paranoid. First, pictures of trees. Then a strange symbol carved into the bark. Then the woman's expression shifting from relaxed, to wary, to terrified. The last photo, almost completely black, had to be brightened by forensic techs. When they enhanced it, the room fell silent. The outline of a hand was visible in the corner. A man's hand, reaching toward the camera. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Carved into the side of a tree behind Mara's shoulder was a symbol investigators recognized immediately. A mark associated with a long cold local case from 11 years ago. A case involving 2 hikers who vanished without a trace. A case connected to a person police believed was dead. A person whose body had never been found. Sheriff Dalton closed the file slowly, his face pale. "Someone sending a message," he said. And the message became clearer when officers returned to the trail to search for more evidence. Near the creek, half buried under stones, they found something else. A second phone. Still powered on. Still recording. A video waiting to be played. Dalton pressed play. A shaky image filled the screen. Trees, darkness, heavy breathing. Then a voice whispering, "Don't look for her, or you'll find what she found." The video ended abruptly. But the last frame froze on a detail the techs hadn't noticed at first, something tucked in the corner of the shot. A boot print. Fresh. Not Mara's. And not one belonging to anyone on the search team. Sheriff Dalton lifted his head, expression grim. "He's still out there," he said. A branch snapped deeper in the woods. Someone, or something, was watching them. Sheriff Dalton raised a hand, signaling the search team to freeze. The woods fell silent, not peaceful silent, but listening silent, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Another snap echoed. Closer this time. Deputy Mara Langley, named long before the missing woman, gripped her flashlight tighter. "That came from the ridge," she whispered. Dalton nodded slowly. "Everyone stay sharp. He's been here recently." The team followed the creek upstream until the trees thinned and the ground dipped into a shallow ravine. The soil was soft, churned up by recent movement. And then they saw it, a narrow footpath, barely visible, carved into the brush by someone who didn't want it found. Dalton crouched and brushed aside a tangle of ferns. Embedded in the mud was a boot print identical to the one in the video, same tread pattern, same size. "He's leading us somewhere," Langley said. "Or leading us into something," Dalton replied. The path wound upward toward a rocky overlook, the kind hikers avoided because the slope was too steep and the ground too unstable. Yet someone had clearly come through recently, branches snapped at chest height, moss scraped off stones, leaves crushed under hurried steps. Halfway up the ridge, Dalton spotted a flash of red between the trees. Windbreaker, Langley breathed. Mara Ellsworth's red windbreaker. It hung from a low branch like a flag. No blood. No tears. No sign of violence. It looked deliberately placed. A message. Dalton's jaw tightened. Bag it. Carefully. Before Langley could reach it, a quiet chime cut through the cold air. Ping. Everyone stiffened. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't wind. It was a phone notification. Langley spun toward Dalton. Sir, the second phone? It's still in your jacket pocket, right? Dalton tapped his chest. The phone they'd found earlier was exactly where he'd put it. Ping. It came again, higher up the ridge. Someone else was here. Dalton motioned silently, and the team ascended the final stretch. The wind grew sharper, carrying the faint scent of smoke. At the top, the plateau opened into a small clearing. That's where they found it. A phone, face up on a flat stone, screen glowing in the dim light. A live video was playing. On the screen was a woman's face, illuminated by a single swinging bulb. Tears streaked down her cheeks. Her lip trembled. She was whispering something, but there was no audio, just the image looping. Langley's breath caught. Oh God! That's Mara. She's alive. Dalton stepped closer, but just before he could lift the phone, the image on the screen flickered. Static. Then a shadow moved across the background of the video, tall, distorted by the light. And then the screen changed to a different message, stark and chilling on a white background. You're getting warmer. Dalton swallowed hard. This was recent. Minutes old. A twig cracked behind them, much too loud this time. The team whipped around, weapons drawn. At the tree line, half hidden behind a cluster of pines, stood a figure. Still watching. Only the outline was visible, but the height, the build. Dalton recognized it instantly. No, he muttered. It can't be. The figure stepped forward, and then the ground beneath the team gave a sudden, violent shudder, as if something massive had shifted under the ridge. The rock cracked. The earth dropped, and the clearing started to collapse beneath their feet. The ground lurched sideways, a deep, guttural crack splitting through the clearing as if the ridge itself were tearing open. Langley screamed Dalton's name, grabbing a jutting root as the earth caved beneath her boots. Hold on! Dalton bellowed, lunging for her wrist. He caught it, barely. Dirt and stones cascaded past them into the widening chasm below. The other deputies scrambled to stable ground, shouting over the roar of shifting rock. The figure at the tree line didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just watched. Dalton dragged Langley back to solid ground, chest heaving. She coughed, shaking but alive. The collapse slowed, then stopped, leaving a jagged hole where the clearing had been moments before. Faint air drafts rose from the darkness below, cold and stale. A chamber. A man-made chamber. Dalton crawled to the edge and shone his flashlight into the depths. Carved walls. Old timbers. And half-buried objects scattered in the dust. But it was the stone pillar in the center that made his blood run cold. Scratched into its surface, illuminated by a shaky beam of light, was the same symbol from Mara's photos, the one linked to the 11-year-old cold case. Langley whispered, "This wasn't a landslide. Someone dug this. Someone opened it." Dalton stood slowly and turned toward the tree line. The figure was gone. A rustle of leaves, movement, swift and deliberate, echoed down the far slope. "He's heading west," one deputy shouted. Dalton raised a hand. "No pursuit. He wants us to follow. We're not running blind in his terrain." The team regrouped, rattled but unhurt, and moved back from the unstable ledge. As they did, Deputy Graves radioed in from the trailhead, voice urgent. "Sheriff, you need to get back here. Now." Dalton stiffened. "But what's happened?" Graves hesitated. Not a good sign. A woman just walked out of the woods. Clothes torn. Cold. Disoriented. Says she's been missing for 2 days. Langley gasped. "Mara?" "That's the thing," Graves said. "She says her name is Mara Ellsworth." Dalton exchanged a stunned look with Langley. "But Sheriff," Graves continued, voice dropping to a shaken whisper. She says there's another Mara still out there. Alive. And she says she saw the man who took her. Dalton's pulse hammered. Did she identify him? A beat of silence. She says it's someone you know, Sheriff. Dalton froze. Above them, from somewhere in the dark pines, a man's voice echoed faintly, low, taunting, unmistakably familiar. Warmer. The voice slithered through the trees like smoke, low, mocking, impossibly close. Langley whipped around, flashlights slicing through branches and mist. Sheriff, who was that? She whispered. Dalton didn't answer. He couldn't. Because he knew the voice. Knew it in a way that made his stomach knot and old memories claw their way to the surface. But he wasn't ready to say the name. Not yet. Pack up, he said instead, forcing his voice steady. We're heading back to the trailhead. Now. The deputies moved fast, shaken and suddenly aware of how exposed they were atop the ridge. The woods felt different, charged, predatory. Every snapped twig sounded like a footstep. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the back of the neck. As they descended, Langley jogged to Dalton's side. Sir, who did she see? Who did you hear? Dalton stared ahead, jaw tight. Not here. Sheriff, if you're withholding. Not here, Langley. His tone cut off any further argument. They continued in tense silence until the trees thinned and the trailhead came into view, now swarming with emergency lights. Deputies, medics, search volunteers. And at the center of it all, wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, sat the woman claiming to be Mara Ellsworth. She looked rough, scratched, dirt-streaked, trembling, but undeniably alive. When she saw Dalton, she shot to her feet, eyes wild. Don't let him follow me, she blurted. He said he would. He said he always finishes what he starts. Dalton raised both hands. You're safe now. You're with us. No, she whispered, backing away. No, you don't understand. He said you wouldn't believe me. He said you'd come anyway. Langley stepped forward gently. Mara, can you tell us who took you? Mara swallowed hard. It wasn't one man. Her voice cracked. It was two. The crowd fell silent. Dalton felt the ground tilt beneath him. No, he murmured. He kept talking, Mara said, desperate. Talking to someone else. Someone who wasn't there. He'd go into the dark and whisper like he was reporting to someone. Someone he called by name. Dalton's heartbeat pounded in his ears. A name. Please not that name. Mara lifted her gaze, eyes shimmering with fear. He called him Nathaniel. Langley frowned. Do we know a Nathaniel connected to the case? But Dalton already knew. Nathaniel. His brother. His dead brother. Except his body had never been recovered. Mara's voice trembled. He said Nathaniel tells him who to take. Who to leave. Who to warn. Dalton staggered back as if struck. Because the voice in the woods, the one whispering warmer, hadn't belonged to the man they'd seen on the ridge. It belonged to someone else. Someone Dalton hadn't heard in 15 years. Sheriff. Langley said, stepping closer. You're pale. What's wrong? Dalton opened his mouth to answer, but every radio on every deputy suddenly crackled to life at once. A voice, distorted but unmistakable, filled the air. Dalton. Stop chasing him. Static hissed. Start chasing me. The radios went dead. The forest fell silent. And from somewhere deep in the trees, just beyond the reach of the searchlights, a figure moved, slow, deliberate, before vanishing into the dark. Dalton stared after it, breath frozen. Because the way it walked, the tilt of the head, the silhouette, it looked exactly like Nathaniel. His brother. His dead brother. Dalton's throat dried to sand. For a heartbeat, one long, merciless heartbeat, he forgot how to breathe. The silhouette was gone now, swallowed by the dense line of pines. But the shape of it, the cadence of the radioed voice, the way the name Nathaniel had cut through him like a blade, none of that was imagination. None of it could be. Langley stepped closer, lowering her voice. Sheriff, you look like you've seen a ghost. He forced himself to speak. I might have. Before she could question him, a medic approached. "Sheriff, we need to take Miss Ellsworth to the hospital. She's dehydrated and in shock." Mara Ellsworth, if this Mara was real, clutched Dalton's sleeve. "Please," she whispered. "Don't let them take me alone. He said he would come back. He said he'd finish it." Dalton steadied her with both hands. "You're under full police protection now. No one is getting to you." "But you don't understand," Mara insisted, gripping him tighter. "He doesn't follow rules. He doesn't stop at lines. He said the woods belonged to him and to Nathaniel." Dalton's pupils shrank. What else did he say about Nathaniel? Before Mara could answer, a deputy jogged up from the southern trail, soaked in sweat and visibly shaken. "Sheriff, we found something. You need to see it. Now." Langley shot Dalton a look. "What now?" The deputy swallowed. It's a grave marker." Dalton braced himself. "Show me." They moved quickly down the narrow southern trail. The air grew colder, unnaturally so, as though the forest itself were holding something tight in its fist. After 10 tense minutes, they arrived at a small clearing illuminated by the deputy's spotlight. There, wedged into the earth beside a twisted oak, stood a wooden plank. Roughly carved. Weathered. A makeshift grave marker. Dalton's stomach twisted as he knelt and brushed away moss covering the carved letters. "Nathaniel." Langley gasped. "Sheriff, is that?" "My brother's name," he said hoarsely. "But Sheriff," the deputy pointed, voice cracking. "Look below it." A second name was carved, fresher, the edges sharp. "Added recently. Marellsworth." Langley froze. "He's marking his victims?" Dalton shook his head slowly. "No. He's marking who he wants us to think are victims." "What does that mean?" Dalton rose, face carved from stone. "It means Mara Ellsworth wasn't kidnapped by a stranger." Langley frowned. "You think she staged this?" "No," Dalton said. "I think someone staged her." The forest answered with a sudden gust, cold enough to extinguish their breath midair. The trees creaked. The darkness seemed to gather at their backs. Then Dalton saw it. A third line, just barely etched into the wood. So shallow it almost escaped notice. "Nathanielmara-Dalton." His own name. Half finished. Langley staggered backward. "Sheriff, he's carving your name into a grave marker." "No," Dalton's voice went low. "He's not carving a grave." He stepped back, heart pounding. "He's carving a list." A twig snapped behind them. All three spun, guns drawn. A voice drifted from the darkness, gentle, calm, almost brotherly. "You're finally catching up, little brother." Dalton's blood iced over. Little brother. No one had called him that in 15 years. Not since the night Nathaniel disappeared. Not since the night everything in their family shattered. Langley aimed her weapon into the trees. "Show yourself. Hands where I can see them." But the voice didn't come from one direction. It seemed to move, drifting like smoke through the branches. "You brought friends." A soft chuckle. "You always did hate the dark alone." Dalton's pulse thundered. "Nathaniel, if you're out there, step into the clearing." The pause. The forest stilled. "You're asking the wrong brother." A shape flickered between the trunks, a tall figure, pale shirt, dark jacket. Too thin. Too familiar. "Nathaniel?" Dalton took one step forward. "Stop right there." The figure stepped closer and closer, until its face entered the edge of the spotlight. Langley drew a sharp breath. "Sheriff, that's..." But the words died. Because the face was Nathaniel's, but wrong, older, sharper, eyes sunken, smile crooked in a way that didn't belong to any memory Dalton had ever known. And the man shook his head. "I'm not Nathaniel," he said quietly. "I just wear his shadow." Dalton raised his gun. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head. "Someone who learned from him. Someone he talks to." He tapped his temple. "Right here." Dalton kept his hands steady, but inside his chest a storm raged. The man took another step forward, unfazed by the drawn weapons. "You want answers," he whispered. But you can't handle the first question. He smiled, slowly crude. Which brother went missing that night? Dalton blinked. What kind of question is that? The only true one, the man replied. Which brother walked into the woods, and which one walked out pretending to be him? Langley stiffened. He's trying to rattle you. Don't listen. But Dalton wasn't breathing, because the man's smile widened. You don't know, do you? He said gently. As kids you looked so much alike. Two sides of the same mirror. And when one of you vanished, the town just assumed the survivor was who he said he was. Dalton's grip faltered. The man leaned in at the edge of the light. Tell me, Sheriff Dalton, are you sure you're Caleb? Langley stepped between them. That's enough. But the figure melted backward into the trees, impossibly fast, vanishing before any of them could react. Dalton lunged forward, shouting, "Stop!" His flashlight beam struck only empty branches. But something else caught in the light, a thin string tied between two pines, leading to a dangling object swaying gently. Langley approached cautiously. Sir, it's a key. A small metal key, old and tarnished. Attached was a note written in a child's handwriting, familiar handwriting. Dalton's own. The note read, "Come find me where we switched places." Dalton staggered back, the world tilting. Langley looked at him, horrified. Switched places? Sheriff, what is he talking about? Dalton couldn't speak, because he knew exactly where the note meant. Exactly where the nightmare had begun. Exactly where the truth waited. Langley reached for his arm. Sheriff. Caleb, what happened out there 15 years ago? Dalton stared into the darkness of the forest. Nathaniel's forest. Their forest. And for the first time since the night his brother vanished, he said the words out loud. I don't know, he whispered. A distant, echoing laugh drifted from deep within the woods. Warmer. Dalton's hands shook as he held the key, the tarnished metal cold against his palm. His mind spun back 15 years, to a night of screams muffled by rain, a shadow in the trees, and a choice he'd buried deep. Langley's voice broke through his memory. Sheriff, we can't just stand here. He's leading you somewhere. Dalton nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. You're right. But this is personal. He stuffed the key into his pocket. We follow but carefully. He's testing us. The forest seemed alive, every branch and rustle conspiring to hide the path. The faint glow of dawn barely penetrated the dense canopy, casting long, jagged shadows. Dalton led, Langley covering his flank, the deputies flanking both sides. The key felt heavier with every step. After 20 minutes, the trail narrowed into a ravine overgrown with thorny underbrush. Dalton paused, peering down into a narrow gully where the sunlight refused to reach. And there, half buried under a layer of fallen leaves, he saw it. A trapdoor, wooden and old, carved with the same symbol from Mara's photos, the symbol that had haunted his nightmares. Langley gasped. That's been here forever. Dalton's hand trembled as he produced the key. It fit perfectly into a rusted lock. A click. The trapdoor creaked open, revealing a dark stairwell descending into the earth. Cold air rose, smelling of mildew and decay. A voice whispered from below, echoing off stone walls. Finally, you're home, little brother. Dalton froze. Not Nathaniel's voice. Not the shadow figures. A third voice, familiar, impossible, soft and commanding. Caleb, you've taken your time. Dalton swallowed hard. Who is this? The answer came as a movement from the darkness. A figure stepped forward, tall, slender, face hidden under a hood. You think you know what happened 15 years ago, the figure said, voice smooth as silk. But you only know what I let you remember. Langley whispered behind him, Sheriff, this is insane. Dalton's jaw tightened. I want the truth. All of it. Now. The figure chuckled, low and deliberate. All at once? No? First you must come down. Face the memory. Face the choice. The stairwell descended into darkness, swallowing the light from their flashlights. Dalton took a step. Then another. The air grew colder, thicker, almost alive. Langley caught his arm. Sir, You wait, think about this. Dalton shook his head. No. I've waited 15 years. It ends today. They reached the bottom. A single light flickered in a cavernous chamber, revealing walls covered with old photographs, dozens of them, of Mara Ellsworth, Nathaniel himself, and faces he didn't recognize. Faces from missing persons files, from cold cases long forgotten. And at the center, suspended from the ceiling by thick ropes, was a chair. In it, something, or someone moved. The figure under the hood gestured toward it. Sit. Or don't. But know this, the next step is not your choice. Dalton stepped forward, heart hammering, and then a voice from the chair spoke. Welcome back, brother. Dalton froze. His blood ran cold. The hooded figure smiled, pulling back the chair's hood, and revealing Nathaniel, alive. But not the brother he remembered. Not the boy he'd lost. Something else had taken him. Something dark. And before Dalton could move, the ropes tightened, the chair swung forward, and a new shadow loomed from the corner of the chamber. Two figures. One trapped past. One waiting. And the truth is more twisted than he could imagine. Dalton's heart thudded in his chest like a drum. The sight of Nathaniel, his brother, alive but twisted, unrecognizable, made the world tilt sideways. His hands trembled as he reached toward him. Nathaniel, what happened to you? Dalton whispered, voice barely audible over the hollow echo of the chamber. Nathaniel's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. What happened? You mean after you left me, Caleb? His voice was soft, chilling. You think you know the story, but it's only the beginning. Dalton's stomach churned. Memories flooded back. The woods at night, the scream, the man-shaped shadow, and then himself, running, believing he'd saved the wrong life. The hooded figure stepped closer, revealing a second face. And eerily familiar. Dalton's stomach turned. You remember Mara? The figure said, voice calm. She's a piece of the puzzle, but not the one you think. Dalton froze. What do you mean? She's alive. We just found her. The figure tilted their head. Alive? Perhaps. But alive doesn't mean free. A gloved hand lifted a tablet from the stone floor. The screen flickered to life, showing video footage of Mara, different Mara, bound, hooded, in a place Dalton didn't recognize. Dalton's breath caught. Another Mara? Nathaniel's eyes glinted in the dim light. Two worlds. Two timelines. Two choices. And now, it's your turn to decide. The hooded figure stepped to the side, revealing a wall of doors, thick, old, each one carved with the same ominous symbol. One door slowly creaked open, revealing darkness deeper than the cavern. Behind each door, Nathaniel whispered, lies a truth you're not ready for. But only one leads to her. Only one leads to freedom or madness. Dalton swallowed. Every instinct screamed to run, to grab Mara, to leave this nightmare behind. But a small, stubborn fire inside him refused to let the past dictate the future. I'll find her, Dalton said, voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. I'll find the real Mara. Nathaniel's smile widened. Brave. Or foolish. Let's see which. Dalton took a deep breath, stepping toward the first door. The cavern seemed to close in around him, the shadows pulsing like living things. Langley followed, gun raised, eyes scanning every corner. He reached for the door handle. And then a voice echoed from the darkness behind him. Soft, familiar, almost impossibly close. Brother, choose wrong and you'll never leave. Dalton froze. His hand hovered over the handle. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the air shifted, like 1,000 eyes were watching. One wrong move. One mistake. And everything he thought he knew about his brother, about Mara, about himself, would be lost forever. He pulled the door open. Darkness swallowed him. And a whisper followed. Welcome to the truth, Caleb. Welcome home. The door slammed shut behind Dalton with a thunderous boom, cutting him off from Langley, from the chamber, from every shred of safety he had left. Darkness swallowed him whole, heavy, suffocating, absolute. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Then a single overhead bulb flickered on. The room was small. Stone walls. Damp floor. A single chair in the center, empty. And on the far wall, a full-length mirror. Dalton stepped forward, heart pounding. In the mirror, his reflection stared back. But it wasn't him. The man in the reflection wore Dalton's face, his uniform, his badge, but his eyes were wrong. Empty. Cold. Smiling. Dalton stumbled back. What is this? A voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. The truth you never wanted. Nathaniel. The reflection lifted its hand before Dalton could move. Not in mimicry, in warning. You forgot what happened, it whispered. So we remembered for you. Memories slammed into Dalton like a tidal wave. The night in the woods. The scream. 2 boys running. A man grabbing Nathaniel. Dalton turning back, then hesitating. Frozen. Terrified. Nathaniel's voice, strained with fear. Caleb, help me. Dalton's legs refusing to move. His body locking. His brother's hands slipping, fingers brushing, missing. Dalton running. Leaving him. Leaving him. Dalton collapsed to his knees, breath ragged. No, that's not, Nathaniel, I didn't mean to. The mirror shattered outward, shards exploding across the room as Nathaniel himself stepped through the wreckage, no longer bound to the chair, no longer imprisoned by memory or illusion. He looked real, terrifyingly real, and utterly broken. You left me, Nathaniel said softly. Then you buried the truth. And you became the brother you wanted to be. Dalton shook his head. I was a kid. I froze. I made a mistake. I've lived with it every day. No, Nathaniel snarled, stepping closer. You lived instead of me. Behind him, the hooded figure emerged, lifting a trembling Mara Ellsworth, the real Mara, into view, rope still cutting into her wrists. She's not part of this. Dalton shouted. Oh, she is, the hooded figure replied. She saw you the night Nathaniel vanished. She knows what you did. Dalton's heart stopped. Mara looked up, tears streaking her dusty face. I saw you run, she whispered. I saw everything. Nathaniel's smile returned, slow and venomous. So now, little brother, the final choice. The hooded figure pulled a knife. Held it to Mara's throat. Save her, Nathaniel said, and I walk free. I disappear into the world, and you spend the rest of your life knowing what you did. He stepped closer. And if you let her die, the truth dies too. You keep your perfect life. Your badge. Your reputation. Everything you stole. Dalton felt his soul tear in half. 2 choices. Both damning. Mara sobbed. Please don't let him. Dalton's hands clenched. He stood slowly, shaking. Then he drew his gun. Nathaniel laughed. Of course he laughed. You can't shoot your own brother. Dalton's voice cracked, but held. I'm not here to save myself. His gun turned, not toward Mara, not toward himself, but toward the hooded figure holding her captive. The shot rang like thunder. The figure fell. Mara stumbled free. Nathaniel roared, a sound more animal than human, and lunged. Dalton fired again, and again, and again, until the chamber shook with the echoes of 15 years of guilt. Nathaniel collapsed at Dalton's feet, eyes fading, a faint smile touching his lips. You finally made a choice, he whispered. Dalton fell to his knees beside him. Nathaniel, I'm sorry. But his brother's eyes were already going dim. Nathaniel exhaled one final breath. Warmer. And went still. The morning sun broke through the trees as Dalton and Langley emerged from the underground chamber, Mara supported between them. Deputies swarmed the scene, echoes of sirens drifting through the forest. Mara would recover. The hooded figure, part of Nathaniel's twisted network, was dead. Nathaniel was gone. For real this time. Dalton stood at the edge of the woods, haunted, hollow, but standing. Langley joined him. You did the right thing, she said softly. Dalton stared into the trees. No, he whispered. I did the necessary thing. The wind shifted through the pines. And for the briefest moment, just a breath, he thought he heard a voice on the breeze. Little brother. Dalton closed his eyes. and stepped out of the forest for the last time.